her team and then walk us through the presentation. You should have copies of it at your station. So with that, if you'll go ahead and walk us through your presentation, and we'll take questions at the end.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, council members. Is this better? All right. Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. I'm Deborah Lennon, Commissioner for the Department of Grants and Community Development.
And I am Genevieve Jones, the Director of Entitlement and Competitive Compliance for the Department of Grants and Community Development.
And I'm Andrea Hopkins, the Business Manager for the Department of Grants and Community Development.
So on the first slide, we've just included the department's new mission statement that was crafted by the management team, and it simply states that the Department of Grants and Community Development is doing good in our community while grounded in service, committed to moving Atlanta forward, and dedicated to excellence. We've included our org chart, or at least the general version of the org chart, and I wanted to just bring to your attention that under the Commissioner's office to the left side of the House, you have our Office of Program Operations, and that is our front-facing portion of the department. These are the staff members who engage most directly with our subrecipients from the various HUD entitlement programs that we are charged with overseeing. The affordable housing and community development includes home funds as well as the CDBG construction. And then, of course, we've got a division dedicated solely to the housing opportunities for persons with AIDS, HOPWA, and then another division for our community development block grants and our emergency solutions grants. And in the middle of the house, we've got our compliance, which focuses on our reports, making certain that we are compliant with all federal regulations that are pertaining to our HUD grants, but also the grants that are not HUD related that we've been tasked with assisting other departments with obtaining. And Ms. Jones is the director of that particular office. On the right side is all things money related, so that's the Office of Fiscal Operations, and I'll share more about that version or that aspect of the department shortly. We wanted to highlight some key things. Last year I was admonished for not sharing with you the details of some of the experiences we had, many of which you all heard about. But this year we've included those primary highlights. So for our community development block grants, we did serve more than 1,500 residents and more than 430 individuals, but 1,173 households. We expended as a city with our subrecipients, our partners who are serving the residents of the city, $3,594,545. That was last year. To date, we have already expended and reimbursed $1,234,938. So that shows that we are well on track to exceeding what we did last year with CDBG, and certainly not continuing to encounter the problems we had with timely reimbursements and contract execution. For our home program, we have received our regular allocation and then $7.9 million in home ARP funds, which are the equivalent of the CV funds that we received with the other grants. In our ESG program, the city expended and reimbursed $6,059,176. And because we were one of the grantees that timely expended, timely executed contracts, and properly utilized those federal funds, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development allocated to the City of Atlanta an additional $1.7 million, which of course we are certainly in need of here with our homelessness and all of the issues and services that we are providing. We've also expended to date $1,189,172 in addition to what we spent last year. With HOPWA, we continue providing services to more than 1,200 households. Last year, we expended, reimbursed, paid $12,619,642, and to date, we have reimbursed $7,054,447. Again, those numbers are to just illustrate that we are well ahead of where we were this time last year, and certainly reimbursing faster and contracting with our subrecipients faster. I believe last The last time I was before you, we were still at an average of 144 days to reimburse. And I see you nodding because I know, I know you know very well the heartache that came with that, not just for you all as you received calls or the mayor's office, but most especially for the subrecipients who are providing those services. And I'm really, really proud to share with you that the team doubled down, was committed, and remains committed to reimbursing in under 30 days. We actually, the last time we ran, I think we were at 25 days average. So that's in receiving the reimbursement requests, processing, and getting those funds back to the subrecipients who are expending their own funds and then looking for us to reimburse so that they can continue providing services. The next few slides are just to detail the numbers that I shared previously. So for ESG, for calendar year 2022, we've outlined the agencies that provided services and how much we reimbursed throughout calendar year 2022. The next slide is the same for HOPWA. And the next slide was for our CDBG. Now this slide, I am going to share with you that it's somewhat inaccurate, but I'll detail why. So on the right-hand side, it lists 24, for FY24, the head count for the department. We have a total of 58 positions, so 58 full-time positions. But at the time that the information was collected and at the time that the booklets were drafted, we had a good number of staff reflective as extra help. And of course, those positions don't count as permanent positions. But since then, we have properly transitioned them. In fact, 27 of the 58 staff members are general funded, and the remaining 31 are funded with HUD entitlement funds, and 2 of those positions reside with Partners for Home. So in case you were wondering why the numbers didn't necessarily add up, that's why. And finance has helped us through that process and continues to help us with that process. The priorities for the upcoming fiscal year are much like last year's priorities because the people remain in need and we remain committed to doing our part to meet the need. But we have better staffed up, we have trained differently, and by that I mean we trained our staff as well as trained the subrecipients so that they are fully aware of HUD's expectations and HUD's expectations not only of us, but of them. So we're leveraging resources to increase the number of people served. We're looking at capacity to make certain that these funds are going exactly where they were intended to go and meeting the needs of the people that they were intended to meet. We're focusing on timeliness, not just in reimbursements, but the timeliness formula that HUD has implemented as it relates specifically to CDBG. How quickly are we utilizing the funds that we are allocated? How quickly are we contracting? How quickly are the subrecipients expending? How quickly are we reimbursing? And then certainly how quickly are we drawing down those funds to repay the city? We've increased technical assistance to our service providers as well as our developers and others. We've increased the level of services provided to the departments, and now this is not related to our HUD entitlement funds, but to those non-HUD funds that we are now tasked with helping other city departments obtain. Their application processes, understanding what makes for a good application and a competitive application. We've acquired physical assets, really specifically housing. The more property we can own as a city with our service providers, with our partners, the more we can assure affordability. So we have prioritized assisting our subrecipients with obtaining affordable housing and thereby maintaining access to affordable housing. We continue to implement strategies that support permanent supportive housing, and then of course, supporting our advocacy groups that are combating homelessness and delivering transitional solutions to our communities. Now, that's the gist of it, and we are prepared to answer your questions, but we also kept in mind that you had a very late night, and so we're just doing our part to assist you also.
Much appreciated, much appreciated. But we do have questions, so
Yes.
We'll start with Councilmember Shook, followed by Councilmember Dozier.
Okay, and I'm confess to being a little confused about your headcount situation.
Yes, sir.
So let's just start with page 441, and I'm looking at the printed head count here. It goes from is an increase in 8.5 people.
Yes, that's exactly what it states. I think that .5 was the part-timer that we had. But again, at the time that the information was collected, the majority of the department still reflected as extra help. You'll recall that this department was created out of other departments. So we shifted the people from planning and other departments into DGCD, but we did not officially move them to the Department of Grants and Community Development. And there ensued several issues for the other departments. For instance, if their general fund dollars were used to pay the salaries, they could not be reimbursed those dollars. So we underwent a very tedious process to finally extract all of those employees from the other departments and properly move them to DGCD. So at the time that these numbers were determined, those employees were considered extra help and therefore not counted. But in fact, we have a total of 58 full-time positions, 27 of which are general funded, and the other 31 are funded by federal funds.
And are those all filled?
No, they are not.
How many vacancies are you carrying?
In the programmatic division of the office, we have 4 vacancies. In our compliance, we have another 6 vacancies, and then in fiscal, we have 2 vacancies. So our numbers aren't necessarily as bad as some of my counterparts, but they are still very impactful because I'm sure you can imagine it's very difficult finding applicants who actually know this work.
And then I'm going to give you an opportunity to toot your horn here. Tell us how you reduced, how you went from 144 to 30 or less.
With a lot of pressure.
Yeah, but what did you figure out? I'm curious.
So when I arrived here, I was already doing this work somewhere else. And what I found was that because the city of Atlanta was under special conditions from HUD, and those special conditions placed a set of handcuffs on us. City of Atlanta, you've messed up in this area, you weren't doing it properly, so we're going to watch you. You will do your reimbursement, send it to us, we're going to review it, we'll approve it, and then you can move to the next step. Or City of Atlanta, you need additional training, you must have staff, you must do this, this, and that. We then turned around and added extra requirements to ourselves. We further handcuffed ourselves, partially because of the previous investigation, and I also think partially out of fear of going backwards. Turns out we didn't have to do it that way. We were really slowing ourselves down, and so we eliminated some of the additional steps. I spoke with CFO Bala, I spoke with then COO John Keene, and then since then I've spoken with Ms. Lisa Gordon, DCOO LaShondra Burks was super helpful, and then of course the mayor was supportive, and I assured them that what I was proposing wasn't just some random idea that I thought would work, but it was in fact what other grantees had been doing and other jurisdictions were doing, and that was completely okay with HUD. Rarely will HUD tell you how to run your program, but they will give you an outline of what's mandatory. We added a lot of things that were not mandatory. So we removed some of that. We reduced our steps. We were having 4, 5, 6 levels of review before we would pay our reimbursements. We also asked, in some instances from some service providers, 5,000 pages of supporting documents every single month. We were not monitoring our subrecipients. And so Ms. Jones' division of the department now has a full-fledged process for monitoring. If you monitor properly, those 5,000 pages of documentation are reviewed at monitoring, not every month with every single reimbursement. So we were able to hold them accountable to the same level of accountability that HUD holds us. We go check out. During the pandemic, we did it remotely. We engaged in a lot of training because as much as we needed internal training, our subrecipients also needed training. They were not up to date on the most recent requirements, the most recent guidance as provided by HUD. And so not slowly, but rather very quickly, we implemented some of that change with the assistance of the mayor's office. It also helped that mayor put a date on it. He set a date for all reimbursements that were older than a year to be paid, and then a different date for reimbursements within that year to be paid. You all, along with the administration, gave us additional staffing. So we were able to hire on initially temporarily and then some more. And we doubled down. We worked long hours. We worked nights. We worked weekends. I had a lot of meetings with subrecipients, specifically project sponsors, and those are HOPWA subrecipients who did not trust me in the beginning, who did not believe it, but once they started to see that the commitment was here to stay, they jumped on board too, and they started responding to our requests more quickly. But we implemented a lot of technical changes with the permission of the administration and HUD.
And are we out from under that HUD status?
Yes, sir.
All right, excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, and good to see you, Commissioner Lon, and good to see both of y'all as well. Just a quick question, and this came up near the end of the last NOFA application period. When y'all have organizations that are applying for funding, whether it's CBDG, whether it's HOPWA, how do y'all typically communicate when those opportunities, when the grant period opens? I recognize that previous recipients probably get that information so they know to apply again. I know I was included as a BCC on a distribution that went out, and I'm assuming it went out to probably previous recipients. I had an organization that reached out to me asking how they could get involved in the CBDG application process, not knowing. I let them know, like, hey, just so you know, the NOFA that went out is open. It closes in 48 hours. But just want to see if in this budget, if y'all are doing anything to promote some of these programs. I recognize that with modernization, particularly with HOPWA, those funds are not as available. So, I mean, I know there's probably some reticence to be more aggressive about letting people know that there's an opportunity to apply for some of this funding when it's not as robust as it used to be in the past. But just thinking about where there's an opportunity to get more organizations involved in the work that the city's doing, and where can we as council members be supportive of that effort?
Yes, sir. You want to take that?
Absolutely. As a division, we made great strides in making sure to add individuals to the communication. So we appreciate you having the opportunity to share that with potential subrecipients. Our goal in future NOFAs is to attend NPU meetings and to ensure that we are expanding our reach. Additionally, the TA sessions, so giving that technical assistance more frequently leading up to the NOFA. Some of the challenges that we examined during this period was ensuring that we remained on time with submitting the NOFA and getting through council in a timely fashion. So we're currently reviewing NOFA's applications as we speak in hopes of ensuring the timeliness. You know, we talk so much about making sure that we expend timely and are able to contract timely. So moving forward, our goal and our expectation with the next NOFA is that we have even more opportunities for community members and MPUs to be involved in that process. So that's the plan, yes.
And I do want to add specifically for this NOFA process that we just concluded. So every time we got a call from someone who was interested or even thought they would be interested, we took down that email address. We added it to the information that was sent to existing subrecipients. We shared the information with our HOPWA advisory. We have quarterly updates for each of our grants, and we shared the information there. We put it on the website. We put it in the paper. We took several steps that maybe we'd not taken quite as regularly in the past. And unfortunately, someone's always going to miss it. But the steps that Ms. Jones has outlined are those that we will add in addition to what we've already started doing and continue to do.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate particularly with the MPUs, because a lot of these particular community organizations are nested with our MPUs and are attending meetings even if they're not actively part of those MPU boards or voting members, but they want to retain those connections to those communities. I wonder too, there's an opportunity through working with the administration as far as press releases or press advisories or even social media to help have a more consistent push of that information, so that whether it's people subscribe to a newsletter or something along those lines, just to I recognize that y'all do have a process, and y'all, I mean, clearly people are applying for these grants to see how much y'all are dispersing every year, but just making more parts of our communities aware of where there's some opportunities to partner with the city. I think it will be great to showcase that with just the diversity of who all is doing work in our communities across the city. I think there's just an awesome opportunity there, and that's famous last words. I know social media can be easy and sometimes can be really hard, but just even something as simple as that, I think would go a long way to expanding outreach. And so I just wanted to offer that as well. Yeah, I yield. Thank you.
All right, other questions? I will say, I mean, the way I know y'all are doing a great job is we're not getting any emails. I mean, it's particularly the HOPA. I felt like last year I was getting an email every week. And while they were acknowledging the process, I think you mentioned the trust piece. I think that you could still feel that thread, like it's getting better, but, and then this year quite frankly, it's crickets, and I applaud y'all for that. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. The fact that you're turning around reimbursement requests, that was the biggest concern that everybody had. I guess kind of looking to the next level, the next step, it's really about how are we feeling in terms of our ability to fully expend all the grant dollars and not have to send any back. That's question number one. And then question number two is, what is question number two? Let's start with that one. I'll remember in a second.
Not having funds recaptured is very important, especially for our city where we need more funds. And so the best way to even advocate for that is to utilize the funds that were already allocated. We don't have any concern, not one in this moment, that any funds will be recaptured. Okay, that's exactly what I want to hear, so thank you for that. The second is that I do also remember last year there was, with the federal government kind of retooling some of their programs. I know HOPA was one specifically where funds, the formulas were changing. So the funds that the city was getting was going to decrease. And I don't know if that same applies to the other grant programs as well. But how are we navigating through that in terms of both supporting our grantees who might see haircuts or may have already seen haircuts, or trying to figure out other ways to be able to supplement what the cuts have been? So you're referring to HOPA modernization?
I think, yeah.
Yes. And at least for now, we hope it's only pertaining to HOPA. There's no jeopardy, at least foreseeable, that our other grants will be cut. And we knew that HOPA modernization was coming. Yeah. It's been coming for years. We have, in fact, been impacted. In FY21, we were allocated $21 million. For 22, we went down to $12.9 million. Right. And for 23, we're at $14 million. And that's the NOFA process that we just closed. The first step for us was reprioritizing. And again, I shared that affordable housing and having some semblance of control in that area had to be a top priority for us. So shifting funds to project sponsors who could purchase properties and keep them affordable was what we heard from the majority of our project sponsors, and so we heeded that and made it a top priority. But beyond that, Mayor's office has established a HOPA Modernization Advisory Board, or task force. I think we're calling it a task force. And the purpose of that is to include HOPA in all of the affordable housing conversations. Solely because a resident is eligible for HOPA does not preclude that resident from getting other services, Section 8, CDBG, home funds that are invested in housing. But I think sometimes people don't know that, or people have not connected all of the pieces. And by people, not just the residents, but even some of our service providers. So we're making sure that HOPA is part of the big picture, the conversations. We are having to have some difficult conversations with project sponsors. Project sponsors who are used to being funded every year will not be funded this year, or will not be funded at the same rate that they have become accustomed to, because the funds simply don't exist. So collectively, we're working with the administration to help supplement some of what's lost. But I do want to add this. With CDBG, ESG, and home, we're limited to the city of Atlanta. HOPA is 29 counties. Right. So we want to bring in those other partners that benefit from these funds and who have really expected the city of Atlanta to meet their HOPA needs. Now's the time for them to assist and to help make a difference.
I mean, so long as, I mean, obviously you're talking about it, and I appreciate kind of just the practical dialogue, communication you're having with the grantees and the sponsors, because ultimately that's the biggest thing is if the more lead time we can provide them and strategizing, the less of a shock and pain it will be. And ultimately, you know, you don't want it to essentially, you don't want anyone on not to be able to have housing because of it. So anyway, that's why I asked that question. So thank you. I appreciate you're obviously on top of this, but I did want to ask that question. Anything else from my colleagues on this? Your budget request is pretty straightforward, but again, you're doing a great job because we're not hearing anything on our side. So
We're
please
working to make sure it stays that way.
yeah, please thank your team, and yeah, if no other message gets across, just let them know that it is appreciated. It is noticed, and we know that it's because of the hard work you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Okay, colleagues, that concludes our department presentation today. We're going to adjourn until 6 o'clock, and that's when the millage rate public hearing will begin here, and then the interactive budget hearing will begin right at 6:15. And then for tomorrow's programming, we have finance at 10 o'clock. I'll save all my really tough questions for them. City planning at 11, and then city council at 1, the new Department of Labor at 2, and then our personnel paper discussion will be at 2:30. All right, we stand adjourned until 6 o'clock. Thank you.